Sometimes life can be stranger than fiction. Loosely based on a true story.
I ain't signed up for this. I done had enough of this. You're moving out of pocket. You really need to stop it. Okay. I ain't signed up for this. I done had enough of this. You're moving out of pocket. You really need to stop it. Okay.
I ain't have nothing, you was there, I appreciate it.
Welcome to The Big D, a channel dedicated to helping men navigate the numerous challenges of divorce. Men often face unique struggles during and after a breakup, but don't always have a safe space to air their feelings, grievances, or experiences. We cover everything from healing and mental health to finances and planning your next chapter. Our goal is to provide support, practical advice, and a place for open conversation. We're excited to hear your personal stories, and we'll be hosting interviews to share real experiences. Join us as we work through this journey together and build a stronger, more fulfilling future.
I done had enough of this. You're moving out of pocket. You really need to stop.
On this particular day, I went to work. I was working for, at that point, what became Morgan Stanley Dean Witter, helping their customer service team. I ran a customer service team and did all of the new hire training and all that stuff for them since I was licensed and I had that knowledge from being a stock trader and all that stuff. So I was working for them, had a decent salary, the 401k, the stock purchase program, which was really great. All of those things, all the benefits, all the health benefits, the salary was decent. We had just gotten great raises and all that stuff. And I went to work one day and they said, hey, come in this room. We got a severance package for you. So I ended up, leaving maybe 15 minutes later, like, hey, I don't have a job anymore. Brand new house, brand new car, having struggles already with the whole situation with the mortgage and all that stuff. And now I lost my job in the middle of this. So how am I going to get a mortgage now? And I lost my job in the middle of this. So that contributed to us not being able to get a mortgage because now all of a sudden in the middle of all of this, I think it was like in November, October, the construction finished. They gave us keys to the house in November. And then we found out in November, basically we were finding out like, oh, wow, they don't have financing for us. We don't have a 30-year mortgage. So, and it had to be like March or April, I got let go from my job. And so, it was just thing after thing after thing. And when I got home that day, my ex was working part-time in a barbershop. And I said to her, I was like, listen, I just lost my job. I don't really know what's going to happen yet, but would you mind picking up a few hours in the barbershop until I can figure it out, get on my feet and grab some other job or whatever. I'll be looking to figure out what I'm going to do here. And she looked me dead in the face and she said, no. I was like, okay, all right. In that moment, I just, really remember that feeling in that moment was that, okay, she is not on the team with me. she's definitely left the team. Whatever it is, she's left the team. And I'm like, everything that I did up to this moment, just getting us here to where we were almost homeless at one point to getting us our own house, 4-bedroom, 2-bath house built from the ground up, having a brand new car in the garage, and I wasn't worth a few extra hours of work until I could get back on my feet. That moment right there really kind of hit me really, really hard. I knew in that moment, like, she is not on the same team with me anymore. And not to give too much information, but we ended up actually leaving that house, finding a condo that we were able to rent. And so we were able to keep this kid safe and everything. We were in that condo probably a good 8 years or so. So we were able to pay our bills and we got on our feet and were able to pay our bills and all that kind of stuff. It just, we weren't able to do it in time to save the house. But, it happens, just the way things happen, it happens. So it hit my self-esteem a lot as a man just feeling like I wasn't good enough. On the job front, employment front, I felt like I wasn't good enough, man. I felt like I'm going to these places and getting interviewed for jobs, and some of them just wouldn't call you back. I had one place in downtown Orlando that they were kind of in the stock business. They were actually did REITs, were their thing. So real estate investment trust or whatever, they managed that or something. And I went there and I interviewed with them, and I had all the credentials. I had the licensing, I had everything, sat with people that worked there, watched the work that they were doing, which was not intense compared to what I was doing at Morgan Stanley and these other places. Not anywhere near as intense, and they just didn't call. And maybe 6 or 8 months later, they had me come back in for an interview again. And I went in or whatever, went through that whole process again. I don't know if they forgot that they interviewed me previously, but I went through the whole process again because they were looking for somebody. And then I went home and sat for weeks, and maybe 3 weeks later realized like they're not calling. They just ghost you. And so that was devastating. It was hurtful to me because it's like, okay, I'm trying to feed my family. This is a good job. It pays well, pays comparable to what I was making before. If I could just get my foot in the door to get to that place, I'm gonna be able to, have my family go back to where we were, get back on that journey of maybe being able to get a house again, and maybe being able just to subsist a little bit better in our lives, So that was painful. And then, just the strain on the relationship was really painful as well. Just realizing she wasn't really on the same team anymore. I mean, it went from like, as a married couple, and not too much information, but you have sex and, she was on birth control or whatever. We didn't have to use condoms. But then when we moved to the condo from the house, immediately it was like, well, now you need to use a condom. And it's like, okay, it's not the worst thing in the world, but at the same time, it's like, it was her little way of like getting back at me for not being man enough to have the job that she wanted me to have, or the money coming in that we had before. It was a little jab at me, and I definitely felt that jab. It was like, just not the physical act, but it was just like, oh wow, like my only worth is in my job. It's only in what I can provide. Now, we lasted like this for a number of years. Like I said, we were in that condo for 8 years. And so we lasted in this kind of situation where it was kind of touch and go. And I would find some jobs or things that just were not up to what I wanted to do and what I wanted for my family. I'm entrepreneurial. I want to build things, and I was able to get involved in some things. And it just seemed like you'd get involved with a job, and 2 years, 3 years or something, you get laid off or something happened and the job is no more, and now you got to start again. And I kept having to start again. And so it just got to the point where it just wasn't working. Financially, it was just tough in Florida. I don't know what it was. It just, the starting over. So it's like, it'll take you probably a couple of years to get out of the financial situation you were in. You finally get on your feet and they let you go again. You got to start again. You're back in that process again. So I think it was a lot of stress for her. I think as a man, that's probably something that I take away from that situation, is like, I know I have to provide. And it gives me fear now at this point of not being able to provide. I have a fear of that. Not having a lot. I mean, even when we were in the house and things were going well at Morgan Stanley, I noticed I had a certain fear of not having enough food for my kids. So when I would get paid, I'd go to the grocery store and have like 2 huge carts full of food, like when I'd go shopping or whatever, and just fill the house because I never wanted my kids to go without. So I noticed that I kind of take things like that, especially financial things. I struggle with that because I know what it is to not have it. I know what it is to lose it when you do have it. And I kind of like overcompensate for that. And so, I wanted the good job. I wanted to be able to provide and all that stuff. And I got into some good situations or whatever. And then I finally got a job with a software company, and I was not sure about this job. The way that I got it was kind of crazy. I think it came through, it was on a listing on, I want to say Craigslist or something, of all places. I sent my resume and they called me. It had to be like 15 minutes later, they called me back. And I'm like, okay, this can't be like anything good. And I ended up going, and it actually turned out to be a really great job for me. I was able to get promoted and move up and stuff in there, whatever. Became the head of a small department there, and I was able to help them merge the company and sell the company to another company. So we went through that whole merger and acquisition type situation. I was strategic in that because I was in the collections department and I was collecting money for the company to make sure that we have the revenues coming that we should. And I had my team working on that. And so I became instrumental there. And then we got bought again. That company that bought us was bought by another company for almost $1 billion. And at that moment, it was a problem because now they have 2 accounting departments. They only needed 1, and we got laid off again. And so prior to that, though, I was going through my divorce. And so we'll talk about that. While I was at the software company, one day I just remember thinking, like, I want to take the wife out to dinner. I know that it hasn't been great or whatever. She's been seeming a little distant. On our anniversary, I took her out to dinner. She seemed very distant or whatever. She just seemed like in a whole different place. It just wasn't the same. We just didn't click like we normally do. We did, like I said, we didn't have a bad relationship. We didn't fight or anything like that. But I could feel something was off, and I just felt like things were happening that were off. And so one day I was just like, oh, you know what? Let me call her up and tell her, like, when I get out of work, I don't get out of work till 9, but when I get out of work, I want to take her to dinner or whatever. And I'm calling her phone, and she don't answer, And so, I was really kind of distraught. I'm like, wait a minute, where are my kids? Where's my son? Where's my kids or whatever? Like, I don't know what's going on. It's like, nobody knows where my son is at. My daughter doesn't know where my son is at and all this stuff. And so I'm just like, okay, this is really strange. What's happening with my family or whatever? And so I was at work and I ended up getting off or whatever and finally getting in contact with her. I actually got in contact with her, I think, on my second break or whatever before I got off work. And it turns out she had been out cheating, So what do you know? It's like, so this is why she's not answering her phone. And so that was a whole situation, and she worked, and I always expected that it's a possibility this can happen. Why? Because she was a barber. She worked in a barbershop. So, she's around men all day long. So I'm like, obviously men are going to talk to a woman in that situation, or whatever woman's there. If her man is not there, they're going to talk to her. So I've always had prepared in my mind that this is a possibility that this can happen. So when it did happen, I don't think I was really, really surprised by it. I was a little shook by it, but because I realized in that moment, I just was like, oh my God, I could end up single here. And I've been married for 15 years. What do I want to do? What am I going to do being single or whatever? And then my kids, like, are my kids going to have their family? So this is all hitting me like a ton of bricks within that day and the next couple of days. Like, I got to make a decision here. Something's going to happen here, and something major is going to happen here, and I got to try to make the right decision. So my whole thing was like, I forgave her. Like, listen, it was more important to me that my kids have their mother. I told her, like, it's more important for my kids to have their mother than for me to have your fidelity one time or whatever. I'm like, listen, I'm a human. It could happen to me. I could be in a situation where I'm put in a situation where I compromise the relationship or whatever, and cheat or do something crazy. I'm like, it could have happened to me, so I'm going to allow you to have that grace. The only thing I ask is that you don't do it again. Looking back at that, now I realize the error of my ways because that drove her further away. We were really close for like maybe a weekend, and then after that, she was just done with everything, So, and I think it just kind of embarrassed her in a way, or she expected me maybe to react a different way. And I didn't. I reacted with like love and compassion and understanding. And she told me like that's not what she expected. And so it was like, I don't think she could deal with it. I think maybe the gravity of what she had done just ate at her. And she just probably couldn't stand to be around me. So I noticed like 2 weeks after, we kind of made up or whatever, 2 weeks or whatever. It wasn't great. It was rocky a little bit. But I noticed that she didn't, she slept on the floor. And I'm like, this woman loves her bed. This woman loves her bed. So there's no way in the world that she's going to sleep on the floor. And I'm like looking at her and she starts laughing. And I kind of start laughing too because I'm like, oh shit, you did something crazy. Like, I know that something's wrong because why would you not want to sleep on your bed? Why would you put covers on the floor and sleep on the floor? This is crazy. You love your bed. There's no way. And so I just kind of knew in that moment, but she wouldn't admit it. She wouldn't say, hey, this is what happened or whatever. And it took a while or whatever. And she finally admitted that this is what she did or whatever. And I just realized at that point, I was like, you know what? There's no fixing it. So she wants a divorce. She's saying she wants a divorce or whatever. I'm like, okay, let's do that or whatever. At first I was a little bit against signing it or whatever. When I got the papers or whatever, I was a little bit against signing it or whatever. But I realized this is the best thing. It's like, I've got to move forward with my life. At that point in time, I was maybe 38 years old. And I was like, you know what? Why try to prolong it and stay in it? And then, at 45 or 50, you're back in the same situation again. And now you've got to try to go through your divorce and be older. I'm like, I'm still young enough. I still feel young enough to have a life outside of this. So the divorce was not contentious at all. It might be different for some of you guys. You guys are going to have to let me know like what you're going through. But financially, we didn't have a lot. Assets and all that kind of stuff, we didn't have a lot. So it was like more about where are my kids going to be? My daughter had just turned 18 or whatever. My son was 12. So where are we going to end up here? What's going to happen? Am I going to be able to just take care of them by myself because we were a 2-income household? It's like, am I going to be able to take care of them by myself? What's going to happen here? So, she decided to move out. She did let me know she was moving out. I told her like, hey, because she had been acting weird. Like she would come home for a day or two and then she'd be gone for like 4 or 5 days. Never come home and then come home, a couple days. And I'm like, our kids really can't see this. I don't want our kids seeing this. They know something is wrong or whatever. You're either here or you're there, and, but let me know when you move out. So she decided to get an apartment or whatever. She didn't let me know. We actually had gone to church because I had been back to the church because of the divorce situation or whatever. I just felt like, well, maybe I'm not close to God and maybe God is punishing me. So I went back to the church for like 4 years. But in that time, I went back to the church and we came out of church and I got a text saying, hey, I moved out. So, she was very involved in the church. She had more position and stuff like that in the church, things that she was doing that obviously people would miss her. And so she got expelled from the church because that's the way they do things. So she couldn't even talk to her daughter. Her daughter really couldn't even have conversation with her because they do a shunning thing where you can't talk to the person or whatever. So people were asking me what happened and was she on drugs and all this other stuff or whatever. And one thing I did notice as a man, when you get divorced, maybe you guys can corroborate that with me and tell me if this is your experience, but they always asked what I did to her. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's the one who started this whole thing. Now, of course we have our history, financially and just, just trying to live and subsist and survive. But in this instance or whatever, I didn't do anything to her. I didn't cheat on her. I didn't do anything to her. There was no physical altercations or anything like that, or even arguments really. It was just something that came up. She decided that she wanted to do. I guess she had a midlife crisis or something. But a lot of people came to, would just ask you, well, what did you do to her? And so I think a lot of you guys might go through that same thing too. You feel like you're the one who's guilty. You're the one who obviously did something because she wouldn't do anything to you unless you did something to her first. I'm like, because she's a woman, she can't be just have bad judgment or make a bad decision or something unless I forced it. It's just, as a man, this is something that we face, when we go through the divorce. And that's tough for us too. Just emotionally, it's like you start to wonder, like, okay, am I flawed? Am I that flawed that I made her break up our family and I took her away from our kids? These are things that you start to think about as a man, and it's tough, man. It's tough. So, I want to kind of hear you guys take on your stories and the things that you went through. These are the emotions and the things that, maybe we should talk about. Maybe we should be more open with, and be more forthcoming with, because if we can't have the conversation in other spaces, it's going to be tough to go through this on your own. I was in a Reddit feed yesterday, and a guy was saying he's almost done with the feed because he's so upset or so tired of the negativity in the divorce Reddit. He was tired of hearing the bad stories. It's like I never hear anything good. And so I'm like, okay, in my channel, I want to highlight some of the good stuff that came out of the divorce situation too. Let's fast forward a little bit. I know I've been going on a little bit here, a little bit long, but I just want to fast forward to kind of my life now. It's like after I got divorced and we went through that whole process, I stayed with my kids for about 4 years. I kept them for like 4 years. I ended up, like I said, at the software company that was bought twice. We got laid off. And I really had been thinking already, like, I need to travel. I want to go, travel the world. I want to see some things. I don't have a wife anymore. I don't have to worry about her. I can go by myself. I'll just do that if I need to. And so I got my passport for the first time, and I'm just like looking at Brazil to come visit. Then I got laid off, and it was like, okay, if you stay till July 1st, we're going to give you this amount of money in addition to your severance. And it was a nice sum of money. And they were like, okay, we'll just pay you every 2 weeks like you get a normal paycheck or whatever. I was like, okay, that's cool. Then I can go to Brazil for like 3 months. And I did. I went to Brazil for like 3 months. I went to Sao Paulo first. I stayed in Ilhabela, which is an island in the Sao Paulo state. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful place. I mean, it was just great to get away for like 3 months and just not have to deal with anything in the States. Then I came home for 6 weeks, and then I came back and I visited Rio for 3 months, and I just kind of fell in love with the place and the beach and stuff. And that's a whole story that's for, another time. But, and then I decided I wanted to move here and I wanted to live overseas or whatever. And the whole thing was me deciding that I wanted to write the next chapter of my book, of my life, the way that I wanted to write it. And that's what I got determined to do. And I think, maybe you guys that are out there experience divorce and things like that right now, or these big life changes, maybe this is something that you might think about is, how do you want to write the next chapter of your book, the book of your life? You're in control of that. You can control it. Even if it looks like it's dire, you don't have the money, you don't have the time, you may not have the job, you may not have the car, you don't have a girl, you don't have the apartment, you may not have your kids. But you can still start to mold your life. If you get determined and start to write down what your goals are, what it is you want to accomplish, what it is you feel like will be fulfilling for you, what type of legacy you want to leave when you leave this earth, and just say, this is step by step what I need to do to kind of get there. And just start taking the steps. If you don't start, you're never going to get there. So, my ability to sit here in my studio here right now in Copacabana, all started with me making that decision back in 2013 that, hey, you know what? My life's going to go a different direction here. I even started letting my kids know, hey, my life's going to go a different direction here. I can see this coming already. I just want to prepare you for it, that I may not always be around. We had those discussions or whatever, and 2018 was that time for me to make the move. So we'll get deeper into some of these things, some things that maybe I didn't remember today. I just wanted to kind of give you a little bit of my story so that you can feel comfortable knowing that I'm not just here getting your information or interviewing you. I want you to know that I've been through it, and that I've experienced some of the things that you're going through, and you've probably experienced things that I didn't have to go through. but I want to provide a safe space for us to talk about it. So hopefully my story is a little bit inspiring. Hopefully I can get you guys to come on and start to talk about your story. If you don't want to show your face, that's fine. I didn't really want to show mine either, but I felt I had to be personal. But we can do like maybe a live interview or something like that. Or maybe I'll have some questions prepared and we'll just let you talk, man. We'll just let you talk so that you have a place where you know you can go and you can vent a little bit and say, hey, man, I'm going through this situation, or I've been through this situation. I'm trying to elevate to another level, or I'm trying to do this in my life or whatever. And you can help the guys around you that are also going through it, that may not be fond of getting on the camera or fond of getting on YouTube and telling their story. Maybe your story can be inspiring to them. Hopefully my story can be inspiring to you as well. So I'm real excited about how the channel's gonna go. It's a tough subject, but it's also the subject that we can actually take it and be empowered by, and that's what I want to see. I want to see us be powerful in our distress and in our pain. We can still have a lot of power. We're men. We got the big D, right? We're going to leave it at that. It's the big D, your boy Derek. We'll talk to you soon. If you want to interview with me, let me know and we'll create this thing together, all right? Peace out.
Sometimes life can be stranger than fiction. Loosely based on a true story.
I ain't signed up for this. I done had enough of this. You're moving out of pocket. You really need to stop it. Oh, yeah. I ain't signed up for this. I done had enough of this. You're moving out of pocket. You really need to stop it. Oh, yeah.
I have nothing, you was dead.